Alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu rasulillah, wa ala alihi wa ashabihi wa man sara ala sabilihi ila yawmiddin amma ba'd. So today inshallah ta'ala we'll be continuing our lesson in studying the book Al-Mulakis Al-Fiqhi by Shaykh Salih Fawzan, Hafidullah. And in the last lesson that we were covering, that we had reached the chapter concerning the Bab fi Sujud at-Tilawa. So discussing concerning some of the ahkam that have been mentioned regarding Sujud at-Tilawa. And this Sujud at-Tilawa is the reason for it is if the person was to read particular or certain verses from the Quran that requires a person to prostrate, then the person will carry out this Sujud at-Tilawa. So in the previous lesson we have discussed matters relating to the hukum, as the Shaykh mentioned, that is an ittifaq between the ulama that regarding sujood tilawa, it is something which is mashru'. Then there's a khilaf between the ulama regarding is it wajib to be done if the person was to read these verses regarding sujood, is it wajib or mustahab? So we have a difference between the ulama and we outline that difference, and that the more correct view that those of the ulama who take the position that for the person who's the qari, the one who's reciting, or the person who's mustama', the person who's listening, that it is mustahab, highly recommended for them to prostrate if they were to read or to hear these particular verses. Then we discuss other matters, and also that we matters regarding this matter. Then we discuss concerning matters regarding sujood tilawa, regarding concerning as-sama', regarding concerning the Sa'ama, who mentioned that the Shaykh described as a person who hears the Quran but is not giving it any attention. So the person is not focused and listen to the Quran, but I've overheard the Quran. What's the ruling pertaining to that? So we discuss most of those points, and inshallah ta'ala today we'll start to discuss concerning what is referred to as sajadat al-tilawa fil Quran. Tafaddal al-Qari.
Bismillah wa salatu wa salam ala Rasulillah. Qala ma'allif hafidhahu Allah. The surahs of the Quran that involve verses of prostration are Al-A'raf, the elevations, Al-Ra'ad, the thunder, Al-Nahl, the bees, Al-Isra, the night journey, Maryam, Mary, Al-Hajj, the pilgrimage, Al-Furqan, the criterion, and An-Namal, the ants, Al-Sajda, the prostration, Fusilat, detailed, An-Najm, the stars, Al-Inshiqaq, the split, Al-Alaq, Al-Alaq, the clinging substance. Concerning the prostrations in the Surah As-Sa'd or Sa'd, there is a disagreement between the scholars whether it is a prostration of thankfulness or recitation, and Allah knows best.
Aywa. So the Shaykh the author, Hafidullah wa ra'ahu, that I've mentioned regarding in discussing the matter pertaining sujood tilawa, of those also points to be noted is regarding, as mentioned here, sajadat at-tilawa fil Quran, where those places that one is recommended to make sujood tilawa upon reading certain parts, verse of the Quran. So he cannot say the Shaykh Hafidullah that he mentions those verses. So I'm highlighting those verses that he mentioned over 14 verses or places in the Quran that one would make sujood tilawa. So he started off by mentioning Al-A'raf. So regarding this particular, so he mentioned Al-A'raf, Wal-Rad, Wal-Nahl, Wal-Isra, Wal-Mirram, Wal-Hajj, Wal-Furqan, Wal-Namal, Wal-Sajda, Hamin, Al-Sajda, Al-Najmi, Wal-Inshiqaq, Al-Alaq. And so those are some of the places that he mentioned regarding sajadat at-tilawa. So overall, what I've been mentioned regarding these sajadat in the Quran, that as mentioned, that Ibn Hazm rahimahullah, he mentioned أجمع على أن ليس في القرآن الكريم أكثر من 15 سجدة. That he mentioned that there's an ijma'. This is Ibn Hazm rahimahullah, that is an ijma' between the ulama that there's over 15 places, that there's no more than 15 places in the Quran that the sajadat is to be carried out. So according to the ulama, there's 15 places that are mentioned regarding a sujood tilawa, and it doesn't exceed this. But with this being said, then also to consider that also the ulama, they have a discussion regarding an ijma' that it does not exceed 15 places, right? The next matter is that there's an ijma' between the ulama or there's a ijma between the ulama that there's 10 places that they all agree upon, all the madhahib. So there's 10 places of these 15 sajadat or sajda that it's agreed upon between the ulama that one should prostrate. And then the other remaining 5, there's a difference between the ulama. So as for those 10 places that regarding what one should prostrate that is agreed upon, that's mujma alayh between the ulama, Al-Araf. So Surah Al-Araf, verse 206 is of those places that that is agreed upon. Also the second place is Al-Ra'd, and that's verse 15. Also Surah Al-Nahl, that's verse from 49 to 50. That's the third. The fourth is Al-Isra, from verse 107 to 109. The person prostrated at the end of 109. Also the fifth being Al-Maryam, which is verse 58. Also the sixth being Surah Al-Hajj, verse 18. Also the seventh being that of Surah Al-Furqan, verse 6. Surah Al-Naml, which is verse 25 to 26. Surah Al-Sajda being the ninth, verse 15. And the last of those ones agree upon concerning Surah Al-Fussilat. And that's concerning verse 37 through to 38. So those 10 places is agreed upon between the ulama. The remaining 5, and that's concerning madhab al-ulama. Regarding the remaining 5 that you find that is now an area of difference between the ulama. So we have concerning that and of those 5 places that is agreed upon, that you find that you have a hadith that is authentic relating to 4 and 1 hadith, and 1 place where the hadith is daif regarding its authenticity. So regarding concerning these ones that are, so you have those ones that are disagreed between the ulama regarding this matter. So you find that in Surah Al-Sad, verse 24, then you find that, as the Shaykh Hafidullah, he mentions that there's in Surah Al-Sad a khilaf between the ulama. So Surah Al-Sad, a khilaf between the ulama regarding that those who mention, you state here, is it sujood tilawa or sujood al-shukr? So this sajda of Sad, is it to be classed as one of the sujood tilawa, or it is our sujood al-shukr? So that's a difference between the ulama regarding that particular matter. So overall, the Shaykh Hafidullah, he mentions that these places and the difference between the ulama, and as we mentioned that of these 15, 10 is agreed upon, and we mentioned those 10, and also 5 remaining where there's a difference between the ulama. As for the madhab of the ulama, and also just to note, you have some hadith that discusses concerning that sujood tilawa is 15 places in the Quran. Those hadith are generally weak. So you have a hadith that discusses concerning that sujood tilawa is 15 places in the Quran. That hadith by itself is a weak hadith on that particular topic. So the matter that so you find between the ulama that you find in some of the madhahib, some of them all that there's 15 places of sujood tilawa, others all that it is 14 places, and another third view is that there's 11 places regarding sujood tilawa. So between the ulama that they agree upon 10, then a difference regarding the remaining 5. Some all those remaining 5 is a part of sujood tilawa. Another view is that of those 5, 4 are actually the place of sujood tilawa, and also the view of Imam Malik rahimahullah that actual sujood tilawa is 11 places in the Quran. 11 places in the Quran. And also they mentions the call of Imam Ash-Shafi al-Qadim that he owes that there's 11 places regarding sujood tilawa. But that's the difference between the ulama on that particular topic regarding sujood at-tilawa and their place in the Quran. So those places in the Quran are those areas that when the person read those verses, then one is expected, as we mentioned, highly recommended. It is mustahab, sunnah mu'akkada, that the person, he should make sujood tilawa. One should make sujood at tilawa when if one was to read of those places that were mentioned regarding sujood al-tilawa. So as for the sujood al-tilawa, as we'll it is one, so we'll discuss. As for the hayya or the sifa of sujood tilawa, it is one sajda. So the person will make one sajda, is not sajdatan, as in sujood sahu of the forgetfulness is of 2 sajda. In sajdatul tilawa is one sajda that is performed. and we'll explain that further So it is one sajda to be mentioned. أيوة نقرأ.
قال مؤلف حفظه الله, on performing the prostration of recitation, one should pronounce takbir, saying Allahu Akbar, Allah is the greatest. This act is stated according to the hadith of Ibn Umar, in which he said, Allah's Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to recite the Quran to us, and whenever he recited a verse that contained a prostration, he would say takbir and prostrate, and we also used to prostrate along with him, related by Abu Dawood.
So that the next point that the Shaykh Hafidullah he mentioned regarding of the points or the matters relating to sujood at-tilawa. That's a matter discussed between the ulama regarding this matter, regarding in the method and the way in performing sujood at-tilawa, right? So the ulama mentioned is an ittifaq, an agreement between the ulama, that sujood at-tilawa is one sajda. Mean a person go down once, and then that will be sujood tilawa. Then the next issue is regarding, as the Shaykh mentioned, yukabbir idha sajada litilawa. That one is to make a takbir, meaning say Allahu Akbar, and then go into sujood tilawa. So if, for example, the person is in a standing position, is in salah, or a person is outside salat, then the person, before he goes into sujood tilawa, is supposed to say, according to what is mentioned here, Allahu Akbar, then go into sujood tilawa. So from this matter, that what the Shaykh mentioned that, and he mentioned that the proof of this hadith of Ibn Umar radhiyallahu anhuma قال كان عليه السلام يقرأ علينا قرآن فإذا مر بالسجدة كبر وسجد وسجدنا معه. So he mentioned this hadith was said rawahu Abu Dawood. So he used as a proof to say that regarding that, the proof that saying Allahu Akbar, takbir, before going to sujood tilawa, into this particular sujood, that one should say takbir. And he used this hadith of Ibn Umar, or those who are the hadith of Ibn Umar. This hadith of Ibn Umar that is mentioned here is a hadith that is discussed by the ulama. Is a hadith that is on the discussion between the ulama. So you find that this hadith regarding this narration of in Abu Dawood, that it mentioned this hadith on Ibn Umar. And one of the narrators of this hadith, in the isnad of this hadith, is a person, one of the narrators' name is Abdullah al-Umari. Abdullah al-Umari. And Abdullah al-Umari, this is his version of the hadith. This narration is as this version of the hadith. They mentioned that in this version that he mentioned kabbar. فَإِذَا مَرَّ بِالسَّجْدَةِ, if one goes by a sajda, kabbar. وَسَجَد, one say Allahu Akbar, then go into sujood. As for this particular narration, then the ulama have stated is that this narration is da'if due to Abdullah al-Umari, and is known to be da'if. Ali ibn Madini, all him to be da'if. Also Imam Abu Dawood, when he narrates this hadith in his Sunan, then he mentioned regarding al-Thawri, يعجبه هذا hadith Imam al-Sufyan al-Thawri rahimahullah, he was somewhat taken back by this hadith. Then he mentioned a reason by this, because of the wording kabbar. So you find a discussion regarding this hadith, and especially concerning around the wording kabbar. إذا مر بالسجدة kabbar. If one goes into sajda, one will make takbir. So this takbir, this hadith is weak. Overall, the hadith is weak because of Abdullah al-Umari. He is known to be weak. And as mentioned by Ibn Hibban, that he was a person, Abdullah ibn Umar, was a person that indahu salah wal ibadah, was a person was involved, engrossed in ibadah, and also a person was known to be salih. But he mentioned indahu ghafla fil hifz, but he also have ghalabat alayhi ghafla, but he he fell into not being very precise regarding narrations. But even though he himself as a person was righteous and involved in acts of worship, but engrossed in acts of worship, but in his memory was not very precise. So sometimes a person may be righteous, but regarding his narration, it is not taken because of some level of neglect in that area concerning preciseness in narration of hadith. So the ulama overall hold hadith to be da'if. So this hadith is considered to be da'if, and Albani all the hadith to be daif, also An-Nawawi, also leave it to be daif, and Arnaut. So they all this hadith to be daif based upon the narrator Abdullah al-Umari. So based upon this, the ulama, they kind of somewhat, they disagree, you have a difference between the ulama regarding concerning that the act or the masala concerning if one read sujood tilawa. Should one say Allahu Akbar then go into prostration? That's now the issue that is discussed between the ulama. As mentioned by Ibn Uthaymeen and others, that they have mentioned that you find a group of the ulama who hold that one should make a takbir, as Ibn Uthaymeen mentioned that of the ulama, that they disagree concerning that those who hold that one should make a takbir, say Allahu Akbar, goes into sujood tilawa. When they come up, they say also Allahu Akbar. So when they come up to the standing position, come back to the upright position, also they should say Allahu Akbar. And also third, they add that one should give taslim. So one group of the ulama, or the person do three things regarding sujood tilawa. One, say Allahu Akbar. Second, in going down. Second, when they come up, they say again also Allahu Akbar. And also if they're outside salat, they give the taslim. That's one group of the ulama. And he all even saying that view is very weak. That view regarding those three acts is a very weak position, as there's no hadith to substantiate those things. The second view of some of the ulama is that regarding saying takbir in sujood tilawa, to go down, that they mention that it is something to be done. The person should say Allahu Akbar, then go into sujood tilawa. But based upon there's no hadith I mentioned about, also even this hadith of Abdullah of Ibn Umar doesn't mention about saying takbir in coming back up. So the mention is not to be done, and also there is no taslim. So the second view, all that one should say takbir in going down into sujood tilawa, but one should not say takbir in coming back up. And also one should not give taslim outside the salah, if one is not inside salah. So they mentioned that view is the view that is taken by some of the ulama. He holds that view, even though they mean all that view to be like al-wasat, somewhat the view that is in between. And that's a view taken by some of the Hanabila and others. And there is a third view. And that third view is that the person under all circumstances should not say Allahu Akbar in going down into sujood. The person should not also say second Allahu Akbar in coming out of sujood, and also no taslim. So the person doesn't say anything because they mention there's no hadith that is authentic on this topic or that related to this. And the hadith that is mentioned of Ibn Umar is not authentic. So there's no hujjah, no proof in this hadith. So they hold that the person should not say Allahu Akbar in going down, not to say Allahu Akbar in coming up, and also no taslim, as there's no evidence to prove any of these things. And that's a view taken by the mention of those view that is taken by Imam Abu Hanifa, and also a view that is taken by of contemporary Shaykh Albani rahimahullah, and also mention a view of Shaykh Mu'bil rahimahumullah. So that's a view taken by some of the ulama regarding a third view. And that third view, it has some weight because there's no evidence, and also matter concerning ibadah is tawqifiyya. The person requires to have an evidence. There is no explicit evidence regarding this particular matter. But those who hold the second view, that a person should say Allahu Akbar in going down. I mentioned that the hadith of Abu Hurairah mentioned that in the Khulla Khaf, that in every Khaf or Raf, that every time that he went into a position and also come out, he would say Allahu Akbar, which is a general hadith that they use as their proof. So that's concerning that discussion regarding there's no hadith that is and also there's a hadith of Ibn Umar. The same hadith of Ibn Umar also is mentioned in Sahih Bukhari and Muslim. And that narration of Sahih Bukhari and Muslim, there's no mention of Qabbar. So the same hadith, similar hadith is mentioned in Sahih Bukhari and Muslim without any mention of Takbir. So they should have another hadith of Takbir that is not authentic regarding the matter regarding Sujood Tilawa. So that's concerning that matter. Then Ibn Uthaymeen kind of somewhat went on to mention regarding this particular matter that is outside the Salah. That is matter that is being discussed between most of the ulama is regarding outside of the Salah. And he mentioned that this hadith that is being mentioned here of Ibn Umar, whether the hadith in the Bukhari and Muslim, as we mentioned, or this narration, in the narration of Sahih Muslim, it mentioned, fi ghayri salah. There's an additional wording to prove that this hadith of Ibn Umar is outside the salah and not relating to the salah. So if the person is reading the Quran and he's sitting, then the person just go into sujood at-tilawa without saying Allahu Akbar. And coming back, then he doesn't need to say Allahu Akbar, he just come back and he doesn't need to say salam nor the tashahhud. So none of those things need to be done. No takbir before. If you just read the Quran, for example, in a sitting position or seated, he just goes into sujood at-tilawa. When he comes back up, he doesn't say Allah, also does not say Allahu Akbar. He doesn't need to do tashahhud, nor does it need to say salam. So all those 4 things are not needed because there's nothing authentic on this topic regarding those things. Ibn Taymiyyah rahimullah kind of more carried that we discussed in the next matter regarding if one is in salah. So if the person in salah, should the person who is the imam reading or reciting, the person reciting his salah, and he reads sujood tilawa, I've read that verse, then the person should make sujood tilawa. But should the person say Allahu Akbar or not? So, of the ulama, all the person should say Allahu Akbar. Of the ulama, all it is mustahab that the person should say Allahu Akbar and go in based upon the hadith of Abu Hurairah anhu regarding that in the khulla khaf wa raf. That every time that Islam khafada, that he went into a position or rafa, that he would say takbir. Now, so based upon the older person should make a takbir for going down and coming up if he's in salah. But outside salat, then he need not say that, as we had mentioned. But in salat, they prefer that the person should do so. So that goes back to the imam that regarding that if he chooses to say Allahu Akbar, then you find that the jumhur of the ulama who that is something that is preferred to be done. And you find some of the ulama who that is also in salat, it doesn't need to be done. Just go straight into sujood without saying Allahu Akbar. So that's concerned that matter. But Allahu Alam, that based upon if the imam find that, for example, that there's a partition where some people may not know that he has gone into sujood, then it's preferable in that scenario, in that case, for him to say Allahu Akbar. So the people can know that he goes into sujood tilawa. Because there's a partition for them to see what's taking place. As you might find in some of the masajid, it has different ghurfa, different rooms, or there's a divider at some point in the masjid where others cannot see fully what those in front of them. So in that scenario, the imam should make the takbir so people are aware that he's going into sujood at tilawa. Allahu alam. So that's concerning that particular matter. And Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, when he mentioned the hadith of Ibn Umar that mentioned Yaqra alayna al-Quran, that he mentioned the discussion now regarding Yaqra alayna al-Quran, is this regarding qira talaban lil hajar, if the person in this case is the Prophet Islam reading to gain reward, or the recital is as a form of ta'aleem. He more inclined that the qira fahiya qira ta'aleem. He said that the qira, which is ta'aleem, and Allahu alam, it is outside salat, which is saying that as we mentioned, a narration in Sahih Muslim indicate that this qira, as mentioned hadith of Ibn Umar, it was outside of salah, was outside of the salat. So overall, that also you find that the likes of Ibn Taymiyyah and also Ibn Qayyim, that they are more in favor that if the person salat, then one should make the takbir. But as for this person should make the takbir, but as for the taslim and tashahhud, then there's no authentic narration pertaining to those things. So that's concerning that particular matter. Aywa.
قال المؤلف حفظه الله, one should say in prostration, Subhana Rabbi al-A'la, glory be to my Lord the Most High, the same as one says when prostrating during the performing prayer. If one says, my face has prostrated before Allah, who has created and fashioned it, created in it hearing and vision by His power and might. O Allah, reward me for it, the acts of prostration. Remove sins from me by it. Reserve it for me and accept it from me, and you did from your servant, as you did from your servant Dawood.
Okay, repeat that hadith again once. Sorry, repeat that hadith again.
If one says, my face has prostrated by Allah.
So the person, that's what the person, if one
who has created and fashioned it,
Yeah.
created in it hearing and vision by his power and might.
Stop there. Pause. Continue. So remember that pause. I tell you to pause. Continue.
Oh Allah,
That's
reward
the second
me for
hadith.
it.
That the point is that I tell you to pause or read the hadith. Concerning, we mentioned that when one prostrate, once you say that type of dua, then and by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's power and will, then he mentioned, oh Allah,
reward me for it.
or write for me biha, or write for me the reward for this. That's the second hadith. That's a different hadith.
طيب.
So two hadith have been put into one. Clear? So two hadith have been put into one. Aywa.
Remove sins from me by it, reserve it for me, and accept it from me, and you did from your servant David. It will be accepted. To perform the prostration of recitation from the position of standing is better than...
Pause. So I've seen that the next discussion regarding that that is discussed here is regarding that what is to be said in this sujood at-tilawa. What is to be said? The Shaykh mentioned that in yaqul fi sujood, the person would say what one would normally say in sujood. So in sujood at-tilawa, one would say or can say what one would normally say in any sujood, in a normal sujood. Then also he added that also كما يقول في سجود الصلاة. Then also he added the person can say سجد وجهي لله الذي خلقه وصوره, and I mentioned the hadith that we had mentioned. So it said, as for that hadith that I prostrate my face to the one who have created it and fashioned it, وشق سمع, and also the one who have given regarding the hadith. So that hadith that you said, no, that hadith of the thing that this hadith is one hadith up to بحوله وقوته, by his might and by his will. That's one part of the hadith. So that's one hadith by itself, and that hadith is the hadith of Aisha. So that hadith is the hadith of Aisha radhiyallahu anha. That hadith, and then the second hadith they mentioned, Allahumma aktub li biha ajra, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, write for me for this reward. That's the second hadith. Both these two hadith are under discussion. So both these two hadith regarding the authenticity are under discussion. So some of the ulama or the hadith, so you find that so both these two hadith is under discussion. Some of the ulama hassan these hadith, but overall of them concerning Daraqutni or concerning hadith is somewhat more inclined toward that the hadith is daif. Shaykh Al-Albani rahimahullah more inclined toward the hadith. He says aqal darajat hadith hasan. Aqal darajat hasan. So he more inclined that the hadith that is more hasan as the least that can be said about the hadith. But as we mentioned, those hadith that they are under discussion. So those hadith are under discussion. The first hadith of we mentioned is in Ahmed, wa Tirmidhi, wa Nasahi, and we mentioned a discussion regarding with the first hadith. The second hadith, and the second hadith is the hadith of Ibn Abbas. Allahumma uktub. The second hadith is the hadith of Ibn Abbas. But both hadith is under discussion between the ulama. So that's concerning that matter. So the person generally can say what one normally would say in the salah. As for this addition, that there's a discussion regarding these other supplication that can be added or can be said. Some of the ulama already these hadith to be daif, and others only to be hasan. So that's concerning that discussion on that topic. Aywa.
قال المؤلف حفظه الله, to perform the prostration of recitation from the position of standing is better than performing it while sitting.
Aywa. So the next matter that he discussed concerning that, another of those issues concerning that, is it preferable for a person that if one is reading the Quran outside the Salah, that in a sitting position, is it preferable for the person that the one should go back into a standing position and then prostrate? So that's concerned. That's concerned. That discussion between ulama of the ulama, that is something which is preferred to be done. Is a narration of some of the Hanabila. So the view of some of the Hanabila regarding that matter. And also you find that others, that is not the case. That the person can prostrate from the sitting, from whatever position that is in, to the sujood. So if he's in a sitting position, he can go from sitting straight into sujood. He does not, without need for him to stand. So you have that discussion. A person was lying down, he can just do it from that position into sujood. So that's concerning that discussion. So of the ulama, all it's preferred to go into a standing position, then go down. And others hold that the person can just go into sujood from whichever position that he's originally in. So if he's sitting, just go from sitting straight into sujood at tilawa. So that's concerning that discussion between the ulama on this particular topic. So as we mentioned that, so that's concerning Aywa. Then the Shaykh, he mentions,
قال المؤلف حفظه الله, O Muslim, you should know that there are many ways of doing good acts. So make your best to follow them, and be loyal and faithful in both actions and words, that Allah may record you among the happy people. End notes.
So the author, hafidullah, kind of somewhat ending with that note that gone as a tawjih, as a kind of somewhat advice regarding this particular bab or chapter, as normally we do at the end of each chapter. So something the Muslim that he tries to take note of these ahkam that relates to this matter. And as we had mentioned regarding this matter, as we had mentioned previously, that in the Quran regarding a person that there are certain that marks or sign indicating sujood tilawa. So whenever you reach a certain place in the Quran, you see a sign. You have two symbols that are used. The first of which is a line over over that particular place of sajda, and then the second, at the end of that verse, you have like another symbol which could be seen as either a prayer mat or like a small mosque or a small masjid. So those are signs indicating a person should make sujood tilawa when they reach those places in the Quran. As we mentioned, is over 15 places that they are within the Quran noting sujood tilawa. That there's other things that can be added regarding some of the masail that are discussed regarding sujood tilawa. Of those things that we just mentioned, that what they call, based on the ulama, that they mention concerning ikhtisar as-sujud. Ikhtisar as-sujud. Ikhtisar as-sujud, with the ulama, they have mentioned regarding that, is not where a person, an individual, may be reading the Mus'haf, the Quran, and he reads the verse of sujood at-tilawa, and he skipped that verse because he doesn't want to make sujood. So the person may, so you have those cases. That is something which is the ulama, this is something they dislike of this practice. So a person to reach the verse, and he know that he's going to reach the verse, then he skip that verse and go to another verse, so as to miss not prostrating. So this is something which is disliked by the ulama, and something which is jumhur of the ulama, or something which is dislike. Jumhur of the ulama, they are all concerned this act is something which is highly disliked to be done. Or another form where the person also tries to gather all the verses that mention about sujood tilawa and read them so he can make sujood. Also, that's also the ulama mentioned as something which is newly invented. This act of doing this is something which is newly invented, where the person tried to read specifically the verses of sujood tilawa so as that one can prostrate. Also, there's something which is newly invented. So that's concerning that matter. Another matter that they discuss that regarding sujood tilawa, that if the person is in salah, the imam is in salah leading, that the ulama, they're all concerning that if the person salat, that we have either some salat that is jahriya, that are read aloud, and we have some salat with sirriya, some salat is done silently. As for the ulama, they're all concerned, as for those salat, if the person, imam, was to read aloud in the reciting aloud salat, then it is mustahab, highly recommended for him to make sujood tilawa, and those behind should follow. Then the second scenario is if the person is reading in the silent salah, dhuhr as an example, or asr, that I mentioned it is for the imam, that is they dislike for the imam to read in those salat a verse of sujood, and for him to do, because it will put confusion upon those behind. It may confuse those behind. Why is he prostrating? So they dislike for the imam in the salat as-sirriya for him to recite and to do sujood tilawa. Right? So that's concerned. That's of the thing that for those people are imma to be mindful of. Not to make things difficult for those behind and confusion for those behind. To make things as clear as possible for the people praying behind them. So that's a more of tawjih towards those people who may lead the salat or leading others in salah. To be mindful of this. So they mentioned that if the scenario of the imam regarding if he's have read a verse of sujood and then he went into sujood and he comes up, should he continue to read? He have read a verse that verse I read as he have read in a surah that the last ayah is sujood tilawa, Surah Al-Alaq. At the end, reading of sujood tilawa come the end of that surah. So is the imam in that scenario, should he when he go back into the standing position, goes straight back into make takbir and goes into ruku, or read something additional? Read a short surah, so as not maybe to put confusion on people as to what's going on. So again, so the imam that they mentioned, mukhayyar, he have a choice that he can either read something additional, then go into sujood, or if he chooses to go directly into ruku, he can do so. So the choice of in going to ruku, either read something additional, or he can go directly into ruku. But we said I go back into the imam using hikmah, knowing the situation of his congregation, as to what will confuse them, especially said that, especially if there's like barriers, the sister side is completely partitioned off from the brother side. But it's for him to use what is mukhayyar as to which situation is best based upon those behind. That of those matters that is discussed between the ulama. Also another matter that discuss that if the person in reading the Quran, he have read several places where there's sujood tilawa. So there's multi-recital of sujood tilawa. Should he, in that case, for example, the person wants to read 2 places regarding sujood tilawa. They mention that one, he can pray at the end of the second, and that will be sufficient for both. Or if he chooses to do sujood tilawa for each separately, he did it for the first. He read the first of ayah of sujood tilawa. Then he made sujood at tilawa. Then he came back, continued to read. Again, read a second verse of surah, a second place of sujood tilawa. Then in that case, he do sujood tilawa once again, because he did one after another with the sujood after each. So the person, he follows those method. If it is so, either the first method, wait and delay the sujood until the end of all those recital, or he does them one immediately after the other. So that's concerning some of the masahil that relates to sujood at-tilawa. وبالله تعالى توفيق وهادي إلى السبيل. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.